You ever had a therapy client just kind of vanish, right? They drop off the face of the earth. They stop making appointments. They don't reschedule appointments. You can't get a hold of them. They're just kind of gone. If you have ever had this happen before, I want you to know this is a lot more common than you might think. And if you've never had this happen before, I am positive this is going to happen sooner versus later in your journey as a therapist. Now, why might this happen? There's a number of reasons that this might happen that we're going to go over, but my hope from this video is that giving this information to you gives you a better understanding of what's going on with the client and why this might be happening. Because if you don't understand why this is happening for the client, how are you handling that situation in the moment? Are you over analyzing it? Are you getting angry or frustrated about it? All things that can come up, but aren't a good use of your time when instead you could be spending that time focusing on what you can control, which is how you show up for your clients, how you take care of yourself, what you do to take care of yourself, what you do to make sure that you don't get burnt out, and a whole list of other things. So let's first talk about the obvious. The biggest reason that someone is going to stop coming to therapy is because you discharge them. And this is not at all what I'm talking about in this video. Discharging someone makes sense, right? I'm going to talk about what doesn't make sense, what you might not know is causing the client to just kind of drop off the face of the earth. But the number one reason that someone stops coming to therapy is because they discharge, right? Like they are done. They are at a place where you guys have mutually agreed we don't need to keep working together anymore. Or, we need to refer you to a higher level of care, or you're moving. And so I'm transferring your care to somebody else, right? They're discharging in a way where it's mutually agreed upon and expected by both of you. That's not what we're talking about today. Although that is the most common reason that people stop coming to therapy is because they're better, which that's a win, right? That's what we all want. But I want to talk to you about the less obvious reasons. Now, if someone just completely doesn't come back to therapy anymore, you're left with wondering why that might be. So, here are some reasons why people might ghost you in the therapy setting. Clients stop coming back to therapy for a number of reasons. Sometimes they stop coming back because they just don't feel like it's helpful anymore. And so they stop scheduling appointments or they don't reschedule their last appointment because they're just not finding value in the work. Now, as a therapist, this hurts the therapist's heart because I hope that everybody is finding value in the therapy that they're in. However, as a realist, I know that that's not always the case. And sometimes people find themselves in therapy and they just don't feel like they're getting a lot out of it. And so, naturally, if you don't find that you're getting a lot out of something, why would you continue to come? Why would you continue to spend money on it? You wouldn't, right? So, sometimes people don't come back to therapy because they're just not finding it worth their time. And in line with that, sometimes people feel like I'm just not making progress. I was hoping I would feel better. I was hoping that I would reach this goal. I was hoping that this was going to be easier. I was hoping I was going to feel this way, or I just don't feel like I'm making progress in the way that I want. And so I'm not buying into this idea that coming is helping me. And so I'm done with it. I'm not coming back anymore. Sometimes people fall off the face of the earth because there's been a massive change in circumstances. So sometimes they don't reschedule, they don't reach out when you try to re-engage them in therapy because they've had a change in their situation, and that change in their situation has caused them to focus on that and not resuming therapy. Now, what might be a change in circumstance? This could look like change in finances. This could look like losing jobs. This could look like change or lack thereof of insurance or ability to pay, right? Like if I am going through this massive financial hardship, I just had a recent massive medical expense or new debt come up, or our car broke down, or maybe I lost my job or I lost my health insurance. Therapy is like the first thing that typically goes off people's to do list because at this point they're really focusing on how do I survive this massive stress in my life, not how do I go and take care of myself. Even though as therapists we know that they need therapy in that moment probably more than ever because they're really stressed, there's a lot going on, there's a lot to cope with, and they really need that support. That's typically the first thing that comes off of people's list. So massive change in finances is going to be a reason that people just kind of like fall off the face of the earth. That could also look like change in circumstance. So they have to, leave their home for whatever reason. They lose childcare. They become physically sick or ill. And so they can't come to therapy anymore. Now, would it be helpful if they told you that so you could figure out how to support them? Well, sure. But a lot of times people don't. That stressor becomes a thing that causes them to kind of zero their focus in the most on that, which makes sense. And then therapy just goes away and they don't respond. Now, Sometimes people stop coming to therapy because they had full intention of coming back to therapy, but one of those things happens, a life stressor happens, a new curveball happens, like things just take over. And what became, I'm going to, reschedule that appointment that I missed last week becomes, I need to reschedule that appointment, but it's been several weeks and then it's been a month or more. And another reason I see sometimes people fall off the face of the earth is because they struggle with the comeback, right? Now I haven't talked to my therapist in weeks, or I have not answered their email about, am I coming back to therapy in months? And so now it just feels like, well, I can't go back now. Even though that's not the truth, it can very much feel like, I just, I can't go back. And so they don't reach back out. They don't let you know what's going on and they just kind of ghost you. And it's not personal. Everything I've just said in this moment is not necessarily personal or a personal attack on you as a therapist. But sometimes the reason that people don't come back to therapy is personal. Now, what would that be? Well, sometimes personal things about you as a therapist, the work that you're doing, the way you're showing up, things that you've said rubs the client the wrong way. It causes a rupture. It causes them to feel like that they can't trust you, that they're being judged by you. And instead of bringing that up, they just stop coming. They say they're going to schedule an appointment once they look at their work calendar, and then they never do. They say they're going to reschedule after canceling with no real reason, and then they don't. And then they stop responding to your calls or they don't email you back. And it's hard to say to a therapist, you hurt my feelings, or I didn't like something that you said, or I feel like that this isn't helpful, or you talked about yourself in session and I didn't really find that that was helpful, right? It's hard. There's an imbalance in the therapy client relationship where the client has to kind of broach that invisible wall of, hey, there's a professional and there's someone who's helping versus the helper. And to be able to say, I don't like something that you're doing. That's very hard to do. It would be great if clients could say that. And sometimes they do, which is amazing. It shows they trust you. And a lot of times it's really hard to say that. And so instead of saying, hey, I don't like the way that this is going, or I feel like that you're being judgmental, or I feel like that you did something that really hurt my feelings, they just stop coming to therapy. And if it is personal, then obviously it would be great if we knew that information so we could take a step back, we could reflect, we could talk to our supervisor about that, seek consultation or supervision, and figure out how do I address what this is and what's coming up for me as I'm getting this feedback from the client. But oftentimes that's not the case. So we're kind of unable to identify if it's a personal reason or not, but sometimes it is. Sometimes people stop coming back to therapy and they can't tell you because they've been arrested or they've had a probation or parole violation or they've committed a crime and they can't tell you because they're incarcerated. And you wouldn't know that information necessarily, but they obviously can't tell you that. And they're definitely not going to call you and tell you that from jail. And so they stop coming back to therapy because they can't come back to therapy. Same thing if people are taking a turn health wise, or they have a sudden illness, or they're in a bad car accident, or they have a bad situation happen, they're injured, they might just abruptly stop coming back to therapy because they're physically unable to do that. And so they also might be physically unable to call you or to tell you or to respond to emails. And so they just kind of ghost you. It's not necessarily they're intentionally trying to do that, but they have things going on in their life that supersede coming to therapy or even letting you know. And that takes precedence over what's happening. And so they just kind of fall off the face of the earth. And of course, another one would be as if they pass away. Now, this is going to be more common depending upon the population that you work in, especially if you are working in a population that typically serves people who are elder, people who are on hospice, people who are struggling with chronic diseases, people who are sick. You're going to see death pop up as a reason that people stop coming to therapy much more frequently, but that's definitely a real possibility. And again, they're not intentionally trying to ghost you, but they can't tell you. Okay, so we've talked about reasons as to why this might be, but I also want to throw in here, what the heck do you do about this? Because if a client just ghosts you, it can feel really frustrating. It can feel confusing. It can feel out of your control. And it can cause our minds as therapists to go, what happened? Are they okay? Is something wrong? Are they not safe? That absolutely could be the case. And it could absolutely have nothing to do with us. So if a client just ghosts you, first off, if clients just kind of fall off and they stop making appointments or they don't reschedule their appointments, always extend an outreach, call them, email them, check in with them, come from a place of curiosity and compassion of, hey, I'm checking in. I haven't heard from you in a while. I just wanted to see how you were doing. I'm wondering if you're needing any support. I'm wondering if situations have changed, right? Like try to outreach to them and connect with them. I would try that several times before you come to the conclusion that they're not coming back. Because again, there could be a number of reasons, maybe in their control, maybe outside of their control, that's causing them not to respond. And just giving people the benefit of the doubt and just staying compassionate and warm and saying, I care about you, I'm here if you need me, is the best thing to do. Now, let's say you've done that and you still haven't heard back from them. What do you do next? The first thing that we do is we stay in our lane. So, this does not give you the free for all to say, I'm going to Google them, I'm going to look at arrest logs, I'm going to, see if they were admitted to the hospital, I'm going to invade their privacy. No, 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 no. We need to stay in our lane. If something happened, I want to respect the fact that that client is dealing with something that they may or may not want to tell me. And if they don't want to tell me, that's their right. I don't need to go looking for information to justify why they're not coming to therapy. That is not my role. That's not in my lane. So we always want to make sure that we stay in our lane. We don't go looking for that information. We stay right where we are. And oftentimes, you're not going to find out why the person has just kind of fallen off. And hopefully, they feel comfortable or confident enough to reach out at some point again in the future when situations have changed and to re engage in therapy. And some people will, and a lot of people won't. But we have to be comfortable not knowing the reason. And this is what I was saying earlier about kind of not allowing yourself to spiral because that's not a good use of your energy. If you got the sense that the client was maybe heading towards a direction where they were going to fall off, then okay, maybe you could take some of that information and really reflect on why that might be, especially if it was a situation where maybe, for example, you're working with a substance use population and you were getting the sense that maybe someone was really struggling, they weren't really ready to do the work, they were in a position where maybe you thought the relapse was likely bound to happen. And so maybe you could kind of come to the conclusion on your own that it might be because they relapsed. Very valid reason that someone might not come back to therapy because if I am not in a good place, I feel like I'm not making progress, I have relapsed, my situation has changed. Again, like I said earlier, that'd be very hard to tell the therapist and come clean about. And so I might just feel that it's better off not to do that. So if you're picking up on some warning signs before someone falls off, then you obviously have that information to kind of take in and do as you went with. But oftentimes people just kind of fall off. And that's just what happens. And so we just have to stay in our lane and to accept that this is their call and hope that if and when they feel like that they're ready to come back to therapy, they call you or they call somebody else and they get the help and support that they need. Which means we need to just accept that it is what it is and that this is part of the change process. Change is very hard. And so you might have people who they don't come back to therapy because they've gotten to a place where they're feeling like that I can't do this. And they start to believe that like I can't do this. This is hard. This is not what I was expecting. I don't want to go back through all of this. And so they just stop coming. That's another valid reason. And so I just have to take that in and accept that, okay, this is what happens. This is where you're at. I can't change that. And I don't need to go in my head and go down a path of like what could I've done differently and blah 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 because most of the time this is the client doing what they feel like they need to do for reasons that we don't know and it's not necessarily personal. If it is, always reflect on that and look for supervision around that, but we just need to accept that. And then always stay warm and empathetic. Like I was saying a minute ago, if they do reach back out, offer support. Let them know that it's okay, that you're just glad that they reached back out, that you're not holding judgment, that there's nothing negative here, that you're here, you're ready to support them in wherever they might be, whether it's coming back to see you, whether it's referring them to somebody else if their circumstance has changed, and just stay warm and empathetic and supportive in every way that you can so that they know, hey, things happen. I know you have stuff going on. I know you had your reasons. That's okay. I don't care. I'm just here to support you in whatever you might need. You're going to have this. This is going to pop up. If it hasn't already, I can almost guarantee you it's going to happen because people's healing journey is not this constant thing. Healing journeys oftentimes look more like this, where I'm still going up, but I'm having some downhills. I'm having some valleys. I'm having some dips. I'm having some lows because this healing isn't this constant just up, 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 up. I'm always feeling better. Like life is still throwing stuff at us as we're trying to manage and heal and work through and gain self awareness and tools to help us. And so this is going to happen. Again, so many reasons as to why this might happen. And the only thing that we can do is support clients the best way that we can while we have them in therapy and encourage them if something ever happens and they feel like that therapy is no longer helpful, that we hope that they tell us that and that we are happy to support them wherever they might be on their journey, whether that's I need to refer you out, whether we need to take a break, whether your situation has changed and we need to stop or pause temporarily, whether you have a relapse or you have a massive kind of epiphany that you don't want to do this anymore or what have you. We want to lay that groundwork from the get-go when we start working with somebody that all is okay here. And I'm not going to take it personally as a therapist. I just want to be here to support you. And we hope that people tell us that. And sometimes they will, and a lot of times they won't. I hope this was helpful for you. Until next time, bye.